Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me. As Vlad says, we get the bum deal here because we've got the after lunch thing. So I'm going to be keeping an eye on everyone and making sure you're not all falling asleep or playing with your phones. Again, as Vlad's already said, I think this is a great event. Thank you very much for inviting us today. We're delighted to be a partner with PIMSoft. We're delighted to participate in this event, and it's great to see so many people here. My job, apart from to keep you awake after lunch, is to possibly plant a few seeds of new ideas or new thoughts around our technology and PIMSoft's technology, and maybe talk a little bit about how we see the industry evolving around these kind of integrations, and maybe introduce some ideas to you about how you might be able to do things in a slightly different way going forward that's going to add value to your oil and gas operation or whatever industry you're involved in. There's been a lot of mention of technology this morning, and we've thrown around terms like infrastructure and historian and real-time data and models and all this kind of stuff. So hopefully what I'm going to present is a relatively high-level, quick overview of how we see all this coming together in the world of OSIsoft. I'm also painfully aware that in the room there is a vast array of different experiences with this technology. So for those of you who are experts, and I know where you are in the room, I apologize. A lot of this is going to be probably quite familiar to you, but hopefully it will be an interesting way to kick off the afternoon's agenda. So quick question, has anyone in the room never heard of OSIsoft? Okay, go past that. Okay, so in order to talk a little bit about real-time data strategies, how our technology and modeling and simulation tools like Sigmafine can work together, I think it's important to talk a little bit about the history of real-time technology in terms of the oil and gas industry. So if we were to go back maybe 15, 20 years ago, and we were having this conversation then, apart from I'd probably still be at school, well, actually maybe not, that's maybe doing myself a slight overemphasis, but you would probably be looking at something like this, where real-time surveillance in a refinery and an oil and gas operation would look like probably just screens and screens of real-time trends. And hopefully we would all look at this, even though I fully recognize that engineers love this kind of stuff and try to make these screens as big as they can with as many graphs. Hopefully we would all look at something like this and go, it's not a very interesting way to monitor our facilities and get the most out of real-time data. Okay, so the industry evolved into, in this case, what I'm talking about is something like a typical real-time refinery. And we could substitute the word refinery here with an upstream operation or a gas plant or any kind of large industrial operation. But in this case, I'm talking about a typical real-time refinery. And I think some of the examples we've been talking about this morning kind of resonate still with this picture, which is where a lot of the industry, although we may want them to be doing even more advanced things with real-time technology, I think it's fair to say a lot of the industry is still at this point. So what are we looking at here? Lots of pieces of equipment that we're all familiar with generating real-time data. So sensors, pieces of equipment generally connected through our process control environments and being collected into your Pi data historian at this point. And I use the term historian deliberately. And typically what we see in this kind of environment is our engineers coming to this historian database and exporting a lot of this information into Excel spreadsheets and spawning these like bunny rabbits all over their operations. And we also see, interestingly for companies like PIMSoft, our oil and gas customers going out to market and buying a whole range of specialist applications that they use to monitor their refinery, monitor their upstream operation, and link together with this real-time data, okay? And we've talked a lot today about integration between Pi technology and Sigmafine and how we can take our real-time data and stream it into this platform, and we can do mass balance calculations, energy reconciliation, gas transmission reconciliation, all these wonderful things that we may want to do. So in this world, this is a really big part of how the Pi technology has been used. And on top of that, as you're all aware, we provide within OSIsoft our own range of tools for DCS, mimics, that kind of stuff, and process trending. So if you want to have a look at these trends in this kind of environment, you can. Okay? So does anyone anyone got any questions about this? Does this hopefully will resonate with a lot of the room, and we all recognize this is a kind of thing that we've all been doing. But the industry is increasingly interested in doing a lot more with things like analytics, modeling, digital transformation, all the terms we've been talking about. So when we look at this kind of traditional setup, which I think is probably going to be familiar from a lot of your refineries, there are quite a lot of challenges. So what's the first challenge? Well, apologies to Sigmafine, because I would put them in one of these blocks on the side. But to us, the first problem with this is all these applications that you as customers are buying manifest themselves as effective data silos in your data strategy. So your engineers are probably spending a lot of time every day switching between all these different applications, moving data between them, going to different tools, finding things, going to another tool, finding things. And it's not necessarily the most efficient way to always be working around data. Obviously, there's going to be a part of this, because in many cases, these tools are doing very specialist things, okay? Sigmafine does very specialist type of calculations that the Pi system doesn't do and will never do. And so, of course, you're going to be spending time in there. But when you're an engineer and you're wanting to bring all this stuff together to do your job for your refinery, for your upstream asset, these kind of data silos can become a bit of a problem. The next problem that we've got here is that at this point, in this kind of strategy, I would say, the historian is very much a tag-based repository of time series data, okay? And we could probably spend hours talking about the problems with tags and all this kind of issue. But as Vlad alluded to, the main problem is that as we want to increasingly make this data available across our refinery, if we are providing access to all this data to our companies in the form of tag-based identifiers, it's very, very difficult for people in our companies to understand what all this data means. And if they don't understand it, they struggle to get value from it. So this is the next problem. The third problem is that within our real-time technology at this point, we have limited use of any kind of analytics or automation. So although you've got very sophisticated analytics, calculations, simulations, modeling in all these specialist tools, there'll be an awful lot of stuff that you want to do centrally within your real-time data platform that in this kind of application you're not doing. The sort of thing I'm talking about is, is a pressure rising too quickly? Is a temperature falling too slowly? Am I inside or outside of an operating window? All those kind of problems. Things that engineers want to do at very high volume, at very high velocity across our industrial assets. In this kind of world, there's not much of that happening. And the final problem we've got here is that the engineers are still very, very dependent on third-party applications to do the things they want to do. So we believe within OSIsoft that actually the right strategy is a combination of specialist tools that they're going to be buying, but also giving tools to engineers that they can build their own solutions and complement the kind of sophisticated things they're getting from Sigmafine with maybe simpler things that they may want to be doing to monitor pieces of equipment or processes or that kind of stuff. Okay, so we have some problems here. On top of those problems around how do we move forward with digitization, what we're hearing from a lot of our customers is a growing appetite to do more with real-time data in the plants, in your operating assets. Everybody wants to do more. Everybody is waking up to the fact that if you apply technology in a smart way, you can save money, make things more efficient, make things safer, comply with government regulation, etc. So whereas we as OSIsoft, if we'd been having this conversation 15 years ago, we would have probably largely been talking about monitoring operations, monitoring upstream production, digital oil field, those kind of things. Now I spend more than half of my life talking about maintenance and health and safety and real-time drilling and logistics and lots of other topics that previously we wouldn't have been talking about. So the technology landscape is more complicated, and the things you want to do with our technology is more complicated. So we as a company have had to evolve. Now, several years ago, when the industry realized that it wanted to start evolving, everybody started getting extremely excited about things like big data analytics and data lakes, right? And I can see you all getting immediately excited about the idea of talking about big data lakes and all this kind of stuff. And a lot of the companies that came into the market around traditional technology, like Sigmafine and like OSIsoft, said, this is easy. We can evolve this solution really quite simply. All we do is we stick a data lake on top of all of that, and that will solve all your problems. Just stick all your data into this, don't worry about it, and everything you need to do, all your digital transformations will exist in a cloud platform and solve everything you want to do. But thankfully, we are now 2 or 3 years further down the line, and the industry has spent a lot of money and a lot of time kind of playing around with this in various permutations in lots of different companies. And they've kind of realized that there are still a lot of challenges. So the first is sticking tag-based raw data, as we've been mentioning a few times this morning, straight into some large unstructured data lake is not a good way to provide access to data scientists or engineers around doing stuff with this data. You are creating even more data silos. So on top of all your application data silos, you're making your company even more complicated because suddenly you are introducing tons more data silos that may exist outside your own company boundaries or outside your own control. So this is a bit of a challenge as well. And there are, of course, significant data management challenges with all this kind of infrastructure and architecture. Okay, so hopefully I have not painted too much of a miserable vision of the future of everything getting kind of far more complicated and we wanting to do more but struggling to do that. So the point is that we as a platform, Vlad has rightly pointed out, we've been around as a company for 40 years, or very nearly 40 years. We have obviously had to change significantly over that time. And we've always been a company that's prided ourselves on our close relationships with business and operations users within our industrial customers. So we've listened to what the customer wants to do, and we've looked at the technology trends, and we've evolved our solution to be able to provide you all what we think is the right sort of technology to meet the modern demands within your refineries or your industrial assets. So how have we changed? Okay, so seen as this is a PIMSoft conference, I'm well aware that you're all very, very familiar with AF, and or, as I like to refer to our sort of operational data model. But the biggest change that we've made is we've moved away from tags as a way to present this information to most of our users, and we've introduced the idea of data models and digital assets through the use of PyAsset framework. And we've talked a lot about, and we've touched on themes this morning, and we could spend 2 or 3 hours talking about AF and why it's useful and why it's important. But the essence of this is it moves us away from those raw tags and provides a framework for presenting data to people in a meaningful, structured, contextualized way that we can all start doing things useful with. But it also provides a framework for data and workflow integrations between different applications, different tools, different systems. So as you want to complement all that raw data that you're measuring with your own calculations, your own formulas, your own references to other systems, your own references to third-party data analytics tools, predictions from models, whatever it happens to be, PyAsset framework provides you the mechanism to do that. Not sure this is working as well. Second way that we've evolved is our visualization tool has changed. We've seen examples on the screen today of PyVision. To me, PyVision is not just ProcessBook 2.0. PyVision does something very different. PyVision is designed to be a platform that engineers, end users, operations people can configure themselves to start building those kind of decision support tools that I was referring to a minute ago. Okay? So the idea is if an engineer's got something in their mind that they'd like to do with real-time data, they can use PyVision in combination with PyAsset framework and very rapidly build their own solution for monitoring a piece of equipment or doing something with time series data. That can complement the kind of advanced processing they're doing in something like Sigmafine. So this is an important evolution for us. The third evolution is that we've recognized that you as customers increasingly want to integrate your systems and tools together, okay? So if we talked earlier there's a bit of a problem that I'm spending my time flicking between lots of different applications, all our technology now is designed in a way that can be quite easily integrated into other visualization platforms, or other visualization tools can be integrated into our platform. So in this case, this is an upstream example from Petronas in Malaysia, but actually what they're doing, the gray box at the top is a optimization model from PETX, and they've integrated that straight into the Pi platform. So the engineer is no longer having to export all his data into Pi, push that into PETX, do an integrated model workflow for well optimization, then bring it back into Pi. He can do that all together in an integrated way. So we're seeing kind of more of this kind of stuff, and there are people in the room, like Philippe, and companies like this from Ipcos who are doing these kind of advanced integrations with lots of our customers around the world. So this is an exciting evolution of this kind of technology. Obviously, we have to talk about data analytics, and although there are certain people out in the marketplace that would suggest the answer to everything is very advanced machine learning, AI, I think as an industry we've all matured on from this perspective, and we recognize that actually the answer is probably at different layers of different kinds of analytics to solve different types of problems. So we've got very advanced analytics that can help us solve very complex problems, expose insights into data that aren't immediately obvious, but we've also got the need for very high performance streaming analytics that can take place a lot closer to the raw data to help you process that data, spot problems with data quality, fix problems with data quality, provide you calculations, KPIs, metrics, foundational building blocks that can be then used as components within those advanced analytics. So we've had to evolve to do more analytics and support different types of advanced analytics around the Pi system. We've had to evolve to be able to interface with all the business reporting tools, and we've talked about things like Tableau and Power BI and all these kind of tools. We as a company really don't mind what you work with, but we've had to evolve the Pi system so you can work with any of these. And there are new ones coming out almost, on a daily, if not monthly basis. We recognize that you want to connect your Pi system increasingly into your enterprise environment. So you no longer want the Pi system just as a standalone system that someone goes in and looks at a trend in a control room. Now you want far more advanced integrations between your maintenance systems, your ERP systems, your documentation systems, and you want these systems to be able to reference and call each other in an integrated way far more than you've ever wanted to do before. So we've had to modify and develop the Pi system to be able to allow these kind of integrations. We also recognize that you as customers want to do far more things around data sharing. So data sharing between Pi systems or between customers with Pi and other applications has existed for almost as long as the Pi system has. But no longer do people really want to be in a world where they're opening up holes in firewalls or doing large exports into Excel spreadsheets and providing it to someone on a USB stick. We need faster, more agile, more secure ways of exchanging data between our companies and our service providers and our equipment manufacturers. So the Pi systems had to change to be able to do this as well. And there are a whole bunch of other things that we've changed. IoT, or as we call it in OSIsoft, pervasive data collection, mobility, the support of things like digital twin technology. And again, we could spend hours talking about all of these. But there's been lots of kind of evolutions in this technology. But the point is that to me, when we talk about infrastructure, we're not just talking about that first diagram with the addition of Pi AF. We're talking about a different way of working between all our tools and all our different systems and all our analytics platforms. And I think the real message that I'd like you to come away from my presentation today is to start thinking about how you are really implementing the concept of an OSIsoft data infrastructure within your organizations, and how that implementation of that really can help you do more with tools like Sigmafine from PIMsoft. So we've still got all this data, but not surprisingly, we're introducing our Pi AF, our asset framework, our operational data model that allows for far more sophisticated integrations. We are still suggesting very much that we are surrounded in a world with specialist applications. But I think the most important thing that I'd like to mention here is that this arrow is now bidirectional. And this is a really critical point, and I think it's, in my mind, is maybe something we didn't touch on enough this morning in some of our conversations. So all these advanced workflows that you can now do in Sigmafine and all these other tools, all these models, all these simulations, if that information is something that is relevant to the broader organization, if it's a reconciled value, if it's a KPI, if it's something that someone else could use, you really should be bringing that data from these applications back into your central data platform. Not just because we want to sell you more tags and we think this is a good idea. It really makes much more sense from a strategic point of view, which I'm going to touch on in a minute. Surrounded by this, not only do we have our specialist applications, we have those other business systems I mentioned, we have all the real-time decision support tools that your engineers hopefully will be spending lots of time building in your refineries. You have your enterprise reporting platforms, you have your third-party real-time data sharing, all these services and equipment manufacturers exchanging data with them and doing advanced things in your operations. And you're obviously supporting all your data scientists, whichever platform they happen to be using. And if you have none to choose from yourself, increasingly, and it was mentioned earlier, we have our own cloud services product, which is something in very early days yet, but in years to come, I think will mature into something really exciting in this space. But hopefully the key point that you take away from this is that the Pi system really is now becoming a central hub for all your operational time series data in your refinery. Okay? So try not to think of it as in the old way of we take data, we push it into something like Sigmafine, and then our engineers spend their life in Sigmafine or in PETEX or in any other application they happen to be used. There'll still be a massive part of that, and we're in no way suggesting that that's not a big part of it. But there'll be a lot of stuff that's happening down here in these applications that you may want to, for example, put on a business report, or you may want to provide some information to the data science platforms. Or maybe you don't just have one model here. Maybe you have multiple models, and what you actually want to do is send the data to all of them, get the results, bring the data all back into Pi, and have Pi do the comparisons for you between all these different models. There are lots and lots of really sophisticated workflows that you can do, integrating all these different systems together and exchanging data. So when you think about using the Pi system, don't just think about we've got our historian, we've done AF, but we carry on working the same way. AF should really be facilitating the exchange of all this data when it involves time series data within your industrial assets. Anyone disagree? No. Brilliant. Oh, and obviously, this is where Sigmafine plays a role in this kind of overall centralized data strategy, as I would call it, for oil and gas operations. Okay, so only a few more slides, folks, you'll be pleased to know. So what's the value of getting your real-time data strategy right? So all this stuff I'm suggesting, and I appreciate that we're skimming through this really, really high level just after lunch, but what is the value of doing this? Well, we see significant value across the oil and gas industry by getting these strategies right. And we've had presentations from Tibor, from Mol this morning, and we've had presentation, this is just 8 examples of hundreds and hundreds of presentations that we've seen from the oil and gas industry in recent years. But our experience is now that the industry is really getting a grasp of this infrastructure message, and they're really seeing this as a foundational building block. So large organizations like BP, who 3 or 4 years ago very much saw the Pi system as a historian, old technology. Yeah, we're all familiar with historians. They've been the same for the last 20 years, really boring. We're interested in other, more exciting things. Companies like BP are now really waking up to seeing that the value of Pi AF, contextualized data, structured data, providing capabilities to the engineering team through things like Pi Vision, really is a tremendous enabler to value within their organizations. So please think about this, and if you have any questions about how you can do more with Sigmafine and Pi working together, or how you can enhance your real-time data strategies, please come and talk to myself. We have Alberto here, we have Vlad from OSIsoft, and hopefully we're a company that's always approachable and can start conversations with you about bringing some of this to your own organizations. So closing thoughts. So we all recognize the industry is generating more data than it ever has, and we all recognize there are emerging technology trends that we all want to embrace. So we've had to evolve as a technology, okay? And we strongly believe there is significant value to all of you in the room by embracing this centralized data strategy, okay? Get your tools like Sigmafine and Pi working together in a much, much cleverer way. All the examples we've seen this morning, all about gas allocation or reconciliation or mass balance, all could be enhanced even further by taking some of that data, bring it back into Pi, do other things with it, enhance things around data quality, all the kind of exciting areas that we're interested in. I would say across the oil and gas industry, irrespective of what most people say, we're fortunate within OSIsoft that we kind of work with everybody. And I still would say that about 80% of the real world value today of analytics is coming from the application of streaming analytics, high volume, high velocity processing of data at the operational level. Okay? As I've mentioned a few times, bidirectional data and system integrations between applications like Pi and Sigmafine can bring massive benefits. why not give it a go? If you're not doing these kind of things, start thinking about them, start talking to Sigmafine, to PIMSoft, start talking to us. So it's been a very rapid presentation, but we've talked a little bit about the history of this kind of technology, digitization within our upstream assets, our refineries, our gas processing plants. We talked a little bit about AF. We've talked a little bit about PyVision, decision support tools, how we've evolved to provide new capabilities to engineers. We've talked quite a lot about advanced integration between tools like Sigmafine and Pi and what you can do and maybe some ideas that you could have for doing things in the future. And we've touched on a few examples, companies like ENI, Mol who are in the room, and lots of others that are doing this kind of stuff. So again, thank you very much for your time. Hopefully it was an interesting 25 minutes of your life. And if you've got any questions, come and find me later, and I'd be happy to talk further. Thank you very much.